Welcome to Mediocre Gaming, and today we're playing Destiny 2. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and salutations! Today, all about Gambit Prime. Let's get to it. Gambit Prime is ready to drop, and what can we expect from it? Now, at the end of this video, there is lore from the narrative part of Gambit Prime, which is a primer before Gambit Prime drops. So if you're interested in that, stay for the ending. If you're here for what's going on with Gambit Prime, this is what we're at right now. So at the daily reset, March 5th, we're going to have the weekly reset, but we're going to have the DLC Season of the Drifter. What is that all about? So what we're going to see is Gambit is going to be split into three. You're going to have Gambit, Gambit Prime, and Gambit Private matches. Of course, the new mode that everyone is looking forward to is Gambit Prime. Gambit Prime also links with The Reckoning, and that is what Bungie is creating, this gameplay loop between The Reckoning and Gambit Prime. So you play Gambit Prime, you get rewards from playing Gambit Prime, you go over to The Reckoning, you take those rewards to The Reckoning, and then you come back from The Reckoning and go back into Gambit Prime, and it creates this gameplay loop where you're not just playing one thing over and over, such like the Black Armory, where you're going into the Black Armory just over and over and over again, or doing things that are unrelated to the Black Armory so you can get back into the Forge. So this is all, if you just want to do Season of the Drifter, it sounds like you can do just that. You play Gambit Prime, you go over to The Reckoning, you play Reckoning, you go back to Gambit Prime, and just do that over and over again. On a weekly basis, it sounds like you will get to align yourself either with the Drifter or the Vanguard, and there will be rewards based on what you pick. Now, Gambit Prime. How is Gambit Prime different than Gambit? And what changes are coming to Gambit? Now, there's a whole bunch of weapon changes, and I'm not going to go into that. Gambit Prime is 1 round versus 3 rounds in Gambit. There are specialized armor sets that you can get through Gambit Prime, which will help you out and lean into different roles a little bit more, or specialize. So what are these different armors and what perks do they have that are going to help? You have the Reaper set, which is specializing in clearing waves and slaying larger enemies, weakens high value targets, multi-kills, generates special ammo, and gain increased moat lifetime. So sitting on the ground, it'll sit there a little bit longer. Powerful enemy kills, increase grenade recharge. So all nice things to have. The next set is the Sentry set, which is counter invasion and bank protection. That's right. Your moats in the bank are no longer safe. You can drain your enemies' moats and they can drain yours. So the Sentry set, which is yellow, multi-kills, grants a damage buff against Taken. Bank gives health regeneration. So bank the moats and then you get a health regen. Mark invaders for teammates, very nice, and buff allies in the Well of Light. The next set is the Collector set, which is white. Collect moats and send blockers. You drop moats when you die, so instead of only having one moat, everything that you're holding gets dropped for your teammates to pick up. Moats grant an overshield, gain ammo on moat deposit, and you're able to send a giant 20 moat blocker. So unlike everyone else that can only hold 15, you'll be able to hold 20 moats, which goes in with the changes to blockers. No longer are you going to have the Phalanx for 5 and the Knight for 10 and the Ogre for 15. Now you're going to have either a Goblin or Hobgoblin at 5, and at 15 is going to be the Knight. So there's going to be changes to that. So the 20 may be the Ogre. Now the next set is the Invader set. Hunt players and steal moats. It is the red set. Gain ammo while invading. Improved invasion overshield. Damage bonus on guardian kills. And lock and drain moats from enemy bank. So while you're invading, you're going to drain moats. So it'll be more important than ever to find invaders especially if they have that red set. Damage bonus on Guardian kills, so it's basically like a Rampage bonus. So I could see people stacking Rampage plus the Invader set. Improved invasion overshield, so invaders are harder to kill, and you get ammo while invading, and I'm assuming that is either or both special ammo and or heavy ammo. Now there's also going to be changes to the boss phase of Gambit Prime. There are going to be raid-like mechanics where you have to work as a team to bring that primeval down. So it'll be more important than ever to work as a team, even if you are working with 3 blueberries. So when you finish your first match of Gambit Prime, you're going to unlock the Reckoning. You go into the Reckoning, it's a Nightfall-esque experience in vanilla D2 where you have a timer and you have enemies all over the place, and they're going to try to surround you and flank you and take you out. So it's going to be that high octane, gotta get it done quickly experience, and there's going to be different levels. So obviously you're going to start at level 1, and then level 2, level 3 are going to unlock down the road. And you're going to want to do the Reckoning because that is where you get those armor from, the specialized armor for Gambit Prime. So that is the incentive to do the Reckoning and not just stay in Gambit Prime. Gambit Prime is the key to unlocking the Reckoning. The Reckoning is the key to unlocking those specialized armor and armor perks for Gambit Prime. And it sounds like you will need to unlock the perks. So either by playing Gambit Prime or by playing the Reckoning, you're going to unlock those perks. All right, now that is it for the Gambit Prime portion of this episode. We're going to transfer into the lore. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to ring the bell before you leave to be notified of all future episodes as soon as they go live. And thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing. And we'll see you next time. "What's this about?" Jaxer asked. The Titan sat across the rogue light-bearer known only as the Drifter. Between them, unloaded rifles, hand cannons, and Last City food wrappers lay strewn across the derelict's rusty deck. Jaxer could feel the ship's engines humming under his boots, reverberating throughout the chamber. "Think of this as a job interview," Drifter replied. "I got a whole new operation about to come online, and Gambit was training for it. You're one of the best candidates I got." Beneath his helmet, Jaxer raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that? I'm no hero of the Red War." Drifter chuckled. "Why does everyone think I got a mad-on for that one?" Jaxer shook his head. "I heard you two forged a gun together." Drifter frowned. "Hand to my heart, it wasn't just us. Whole bunch of folks running around with malfeasance hand cannons these days. My grandma, too." "That primeval really knows how to run," Jaxer snarled at the deck. "Listen, big guy," Drifter leaned back. "Not my fault you keep missing the shot." Jaxer stood up out of his seat and towered over the other man. "Hey, my bad, brother," Drifter held up a hand. "Your moats are always good here, whether you're packing malfeasance or not. What I need done, only a specialist like you can do." Jaxer stared down at him. "What do you mean?" "I seen you out there. You get how the Taken feel, how the darkness flows. You revel in it." Jaxer sat back down slowly. "You're a born invader, my friend. The best." Drifter smiled again with lightless eyes. "And I'll need someone like you to test out my new project before I unveil it to the unwashed masses. Gambit Prime. Sounds like a promotion at my local Sparrow dealership. You want to get paid or not? What do I kill?" Chapter 2. Drifter scowled at a notch on his glaive as he buffed the blade with a heavy cloth. A large attaché case rested heavily at his feet. He and Jaxer were back aboard the derelict. The Titan held his head in his hands. His glowing armor suffused the room with blood-red warmth. "Cheer up, brother," Drifter said. "That didn't go too bad." "3 Guardians are dead," Jaxer replied, looking up to stare straight at the rogue light-bearer. "That's right," Drifter quipped, continuing to clean his weapon. "In the dirt, never coming back. Their ghosts got sloppy. You give Taken the chance and they'll snuff out your light. The fact that you're alive means your ghost knows what he's doing." "You said this was a test run." Where do you think you are? The Crucible? Gambit Prime is for keeps. Test or no. You son of a... Leave the name calling to me, hotshot. Let's wrap up this debrief and get you paid. You could have helped them. Drifter stood, slamming the butt of his freshly polished glaive on the attaché case at his feet. You got yourself out, he said, leaning on the weapon. You didn't need help. You could have stopped those taken. You could have saved them all. I paid you to try on that armor. How's it treating you? Joxer was silent. It worked exactly like you said it would, he finally responded. I invaded the other side, the armor locked the bank down, and I took their moats right out of it, like they were mine. He looked down at the deck. We wiped them. Yes, you did, the Drifter said, nodding along fiercely with each detail. You're giving everyone a set of these? If they can build it themselves, I'll gladly provide the engram prints, he half smiled. Your fire team, may they rest in peace. They help you out? Joxer took his helmet off, rubbed his eyes. We didn't use names, just like you told us. The Warlock watched our bank. Like a one-man private security company, Drifter nodded. He always seemed to know where the other invader was. A century worth their salt always does. And the hunter? She was a beast. Tore those Cabal up like they were made of paper. Your team's Reaper, Drifter clarified. She's like you, a born killer, but specializing in the enemies of humanity. Your Collector's best friend. Yeah, the Collector, one squirrely titan. Hit a lot, grabbed a bunch of moats. Drifter snickered. You thought he was useless, didn't you? Joxer sighed. Tilly dropped the meanest taken I've ever seen on the enemy side. Brother, if you manage to summon a giant blocker, Drifter shook his head, grinning, that thing's gotta eat. We had them. We gutted the opposing team. It's just... The Titan stopped speaking. He didn't lift his head, still staring at the deck. The primeval, Drifter said with a touch of pride. That primeval took us apart. Drifter shrugged. You found one that matched your strength. Lesson learned. Make sure your ghost stays on his toes. They're all dead, Joxer said again. Yeah, and a town full of immortals, Drifter said. Who'd have thought? Their cut goes to you, and a little extra to keep, the details out of sight from the Vanguard. The rogue light bearer kicked the attaché case across the deck. Joxer picked it up without opening it. More where that came from if you want the work, Drifter said, leaning on his glaive again. You're on your own. Joxer stood up and walked past the Drifter. He left the chamber, massive case in tow. You can keep the armor, Drifter called after him, not bothering to turn around. As the Titan's footsteps echoed down the hall towards the derelict's hangar, a ghost emerged from a dark alcove. How much data did you pick up? Drifter asked. The ghost's eyes glowed a dark red as it projected patterns across the metal deck, scrolling streams of statistics and figures for each candidate in their roles. 3 ghost feeds hung in the air, playing on loop, each one restarted as the same massive taken came into focus. Drifter took it all in, his eyes reflecting the blood red of his ghost light. His smile was all teeth. Chapter 3. The more petals Lionel swept into his garbage bag, the more there seemed to be. His back, slightly crooked with age, burned in protest as he continued to stoop and work. A man in a long coat stood watching him on the opposite side of the long hallway. Lionel figured he'd go away eventually, but the man stayed, idly flipping a green coin. Can I help you? Lionel asked, growing annoyed. They make elders do this? Can't the maintenance frames handle it? Speeds things up. The pedals get everywhere from the, whatever the kids call it, Crimson Days. That's the one. Come on. No one's too old to celebrate Crimson Days. My wife died the day the tower fell. The man stared at the ceiling. Lionel continued to sweep. I got nothing to do today, the man said. Let me take care of this for you. No thanks. Lionel dumped another dustpan full of petals into his bag, then turned and walked right into the man's outstretched hand, palm up, full of glowing sapphire cubes. Lot of glimmer, Lionel said, eyeing the money and the man in turn. Yours. Let me finish this job for you. You a guardian? It's complicated. Lionel stared down at the pure material potential sitting in the man's hand. I'll take your vest and hat too, said the man. Please. The man took off his coat and put on Lionel's orange vest. He put on Lionel's hat and pulled it low, covering his eyes. As he walked, he passed a frame, diligently sweeping the connecting antechamber, and paused to point back toward the petal-strewn hallway he'd just come from. You missed a spot, he said. The frame stared at him, then at the hallway. It marched toward its new objective. The man continued his walk. Warlock Anur Mahal brushed past a maintenance worker in an orange vest, emptying a trash can into a large plastic bag. The door to the consensus closed heavily behind her. The vanguard and representatives from various city factions had gathered around a massive table. Cade's seat was empty. The drifter poses no immediate threat to the population, Zavala was saying to the consensus as Anur approached. Therefore, we motion to grant him a more permanent lease. My order disagrees, she cut in fiercely. Zavala turned. With a slight incline of his head, he gestured from her to the rest of the group. This is Warlock Anur, representing the Praxic Order. I have paperwork to file, so I'll make this short, she said. If the Vanguard is willing, the Praxic Order would like to excise the Drifter from the city. Immediately. We'll do it ourselves. Zavala turned to look at her. The Praxic option is noted, but the city welcomes all Guardians. He's no Guardian. The city welcomes all of humanity who are willing to stand in defense of the city. Commander, with due respect, you ask the Order to have a voice in this discussion. She looked at Zavala in the eye and swept her gaze around the table to address the consensus and Ikora. The Praxic Order has existed since the founding of the city to keep artifacts of the darkness out of Guardian hands. In our opinion, the Drifter represents as great a threat to our people as Gaul or the Taken King. Go on, girl, Executor Hideo said, steepling his fingers. She is no girl, Ikora hissed. Anur ignored both of them, continuing. The Drifter has convinced the Guardian population to use the Taken as a weapon to murder Guardians. There have been no final deaths, said Zavala. That we know of, Anur replied. You're allowing that man to normalize interaction with the Taken. Ikora and Zavala shared a look. The past few months, the Praxic Order has seen a historic number of Guardians go rogue. Rogue? Rogue? What is rogue? Arakjahal said. Everyone is a rogue now. It is fashionable to be rogue. You'll see it in my report, Anur said. Some have adopted the name Dredgen. You want my professional opinion? Ideas are powerful things, and the Drifter has too many. Board that travesty he calls a ship and throw him out an airlock before the city sees another dark age. The Vanguard and the consensus looked at her in silence. I have paperwork to file, she said again, turning around. You know where my office is. As she left, she saw that same maintenance worker had fallen asleep in the entranceway, hat over his eyes, leaning against a trash can. She narrowed her eyes. Chapter 4. Dawdling outside the entrance to the Jinsum lab, the man tucked a green coin into a pocket of his newly acquired duster, and then checked to make sure his obsidian mine was sealed shut. He fiddled with the clasps of the helmet as a technician carrying a clipboard hurried up to the door. She stepped inside, and he followed on her heels. The doors almost caught him as they slid shut, and the tech noticed, turning around to take stock of him. "How you livin'?" the man said in a deep, modulated voice as he shouldered past her. "Creep," the tech muttered, and walked the other way. The man stopped to check a listing of room schedules on a monitor at the front desk, then continued down the hall into the darkness of Lab 3. Inside, the Praxic warlock Anur stood under a constellation of holographic projections anchored in the air around her. She saw the man out of the corner of her eye and nodded her head slightly. "Warlock?" the man said in greeting. "Warlock," she returned, dragging a looping feed from a far corner into focus in front of her. "I won't be long." "Take your time," he said, leaning against the far wall. "I've always wanted to see a Praxic at work." "I assure you it's glamorous," she replied, throwing her arms wide and unfolding the feed into a three-dimensional space. The lab flashed with light and became the shattered, burning husk of the Prison of Elders. The man turned to his left and saw a familiar, weathered face staring up at the 8 barons of the tangled shore. Cade 6 stumbled forward and raised a hand. "Hey, help me out here, little buddy." His ghost appeared in a blazing burst of light. "Freeze playback," Anur said. Time stopped. "Confirm what I'm seeing." The tower's central processing unit spoke with an automated voice. "Ghost, Sundance, audio-visual feed, third-person perspective. Date of recording is roughly 6 months prior. Scan the feed for soft light interposition. None found. This ghost feed is direct from the subject's databanks and has not been tampered with. Resume playback." The high-pitched whine of the rifleman's weapon was the last sound on the feed. It was the last thing Cade's ghost ever heard. The bullet shattered the holographic world around Anur and the man, and Lab 3 reappeared in its place. Anur swept her coat back and clasped her armored hands behind her. Why did the feed end? Subject Sundance suffered unrecoverable system failure and ceased recording. "Scoring guns can't kill a ghost," the man said, taking a step away from the wall and uncrossing his arms. Anur ignored him. "Cause of death," she continued. "Sundance appears to be the victim of a single catastrophic wound from a devourer bullet, modified to fire from a Scorn launcher, projectile classified as ontological. Define devourer bullet. Payload matches the ballistics of a weapon of sorrow or a comparable hive implement." "What do you think, Warlock?" Anur asked the man without turning around. "Didn't the Mindbender build himself an ascendant throne?" "Yes." "Crafting bullets sounds easy if you can manage that." "Sword logic doesn't work that way. The throne came after," Anur replied. "It was built on Cade 6's death." "I didn't catch your name." "Finch," said the man. "Finch," Anur echoed dryly. He gestured at the holographic displays. "What's all this for?" The various HUDs and data streams reflected off Anur's polished black helmet. "I'm investigating the possible involvement of the hero of the war in the death of Cade 6, Finch chuckled. "Won't they hang you for that?" Anur looked at the ground. "You'd be surprised what this city will let a Lightbearer get away with." "I hear that. So, is the big hero actually the villain?" "You can read the report once the Vanguard publishes it." Finch nodded. "Fair enough." He turned to leave, then stopped himself. "What actually happens if the saint turns out to be a sinner?" Anur still hadn't turned around. "The Praxic Order doesn't hesitate, doesn't stop. If we can prove you've done demonstrable harm to humanity or the city, doesn't matter how far or how fast you run, we'll catch you, and you'll face Praxic fire." "You're a scary sister." She turned to look directly at him. "You have no idea." Finch coughed and headed for the door. Behind him, Anur called out, "Didn't you need lab time?" "Just remembered I'm busy," he replied over his shoulder and disappeared. The doors closed and Anur stood in the half-darkness, a sea of data streams reflecting off her helmet. "Restart the feed," she said. Chapter 5. Ikora Ray stepped into Lab 3, followed by Aphoculus. If that idiot thinks we don't recognize him, it would be easy to empty a shotgun in his back and wait for his ghost to show up, Anur interrupted. "It must be close by." She stared hard at an image of Cade's final moments. "We've been through this, Anur," Ikora said, looking purposefully at Anur instead of at the array of displays and screens. "The Vanguard needs him. How many times have you checked this data?" 17. In my off hours. I needed to know if I could trust the Guardian that let Cade die. Ikora was silent for a moment, then she said quietly, "Not the Guardian. Guardians plural. Zavala and I are just as culpable, yes." "You didn't let me finish." "We lost Cade on a random Tuesday, and you all just took that Guardian's word for it? One who's had less than a decade of service?" Anur turned, bathed in the layered light of the holograms. Arc energy hummed in the air around her. The holograms flickered and distorted. "You didn't think to ask whether it was a lie? You didn't think it was important to pore over this footage, to double-check every possible angle?" "We did!" Ikora snapped. Aphoculus nudged her. She steadied herself. "We have. And we've allowed you to look. We gave you Sundance's shell. You've had full access to every report. What have you found?" "Nothing. It's as your hero surmised. Sundance was murdered by the barons of the Tangled Shore. They pooled all their resources to craft a single thorn-like bullet. Had they missed, the last few months would have played out very differently. The hunters might still have their vanguard, but I admit that I see no reason not to believe the official report." Ikora nodded. "Most reliable Guardian I know," she said softly. "It was the only blemish on that record. I had to look into it." Ikora took a breath. "We need you to leave the Drifter alone. You know I have the Vanguard's best interests in mind, and now I know our hero can be trusted. Maybe I've found the help I need." "To do what?" "To save you from yourselves. Anur, it remains my honor to be your hidden, but there are lines I will never cross. Not for you, not for the Order. Do you trust me to do my job?" "Always. The Vanguard asks that you do the same. Always." End of the chapter.